So this should be my last Royals and Rulers video before the end of the year. And I'm actually recording this on the day I had intended to record chapter 1000 or 1102, but at the time I'm recording this, the chapter is not out yet, so I can't do the review. So I'll do this now, and then I'll do the review the next day. So it'll be up on a Friday instead of on a Thursday like normal, but it's like I can't do the review if I don't have the chapter to review from. Where I can actually look at everything. And Brenda is back here on the bed playing with one of her toys. So she is a crinkling puppy right now in the background. I also have my Grinch shirt for Merry Christmas. Even though this will be going up after Christmas, it's still applicable. 12 days of Christmas, Epiphany, depending on how you want to explain all of that. So, next up in my Royals and Rulers series for this, for Dressrosa, we have Kyros. Now, he is not a member of the royal family, and she dropped her toy. Now, Kyros is not a member of the royal family by birth, but he married into the royal family when he married Scarlet, and he is, of course, Rebecca's father, and he has continued to be this very loyal and protective member of the family as much as he can, even during his time as the Thunder Soldier and everything else. During, Doflamingo's reign and everything. And what are you doing? Her eyes are be cute. Are you being cute in the background? Is that what you're doing? You being cute in the background? I can be cute in the foreground too. Is this better? Yes, you're always cute. You're always cute. You're my girl. You're my good girl. Yes, I know you do. And she leaves. My mom's leaving for work. So basic stuff about Kyros I already mentioned. He is the husband, or the widower in this case, of Scarlet, the oldest daughter of King Riku Dole III. He is the son-in-law of Riku Dole III. He is the brother-in-law of Viola, and he is the father of Scarlet. And, the father of Rebecca. Brain. Hey, I kept mixing up Rebecca and Scarlet when I did Scarlet's video too, so, hey, they're both connected to the same guy in the same family, so, I'm allowed to make that mistake every now and then. But he also is, of course, gets turned into the Thunder Soldier of Rage, or the One-Legged Soldier, depending on how they want to put it, during the time that Doflamingo was in charge. He also was very integral in setting up the Project SOP, and everything that goes along with that, with trying to deal with sugar and all of that. And he continued also to raise Rebecca during the time frame after after Scarlet was killed by Diamante, and when everybody had forgotten about him, he still continued to continue his duty as protecting Rebecca, protecting his daughter, regardless of the fact of whether or not she could remember him. Canonically, he is 44 years old currently, which means he was 34 years old when everything happened with Doflamingo showing up and with Scarlet dying. And such. One thing, obviously, that I pointed out in a previous video when I talked about Kyros as well, I've talked about him a couple of times in my Scarlet and Kyros video where I talked about their relationship, and then during the Father's Day stuff, when I was doing One Piece stuff, I talked about him in regards to Rebecca, and the fact that Kyros is based off of the Steadfast Tin Soldier from the Hans Christian Andersen stories, from those fairy tales. And my favorite rendition of the Steadfast Tin Soldier is the Disney version that is in Fantasia 2000. So if you want a brief explanation of that, just go watch that. It's a very good explanation of it, and it has really good music in the background. So for the Steadfast Tin Soldier. So in regards to Kyros, I mean, his personality, he starts off as this, he is initially shown during the flashback as being this very brutal killer and capable of killing in cold blood, which of course leads to when him and Riku meet, and eventually, of course, this leads to him being the champion of the Colosseum and all of that stuff, which allows him to be able to better handle his emotions and be able to target his power more. Better, control his power and his skills and everything like that, and better manage them and everything. And even when he is, the Thunder Soldier, he plays up being a little bit more unserious, because he's, supposed to be this toy, and the toys are supposed to have a bit of whimsy about them and everything like that. Mostly we see him deal with this when he is dealing with Frankie and Luffy when they first meet outside of the Colosseum, and of course, a few other points in time when he's, making fun of the guards and stuff like that, and tricking the Doflamingo family and everything like that. We see him playing that up a bit more. And then later on, when we're getting all the flashbacks and everything, we see more about the fact that he can be this much more serious person, but he also has these moments of levity that come across with him. Of course, he's very good friends with the dwarves. He does what he can to help make Rebecca laugh, even when, everything seems in very dire straits during those 10 years and all of that stuff. So we see a bunch of that. We also see him take his responsibilities very seriously and doing his, upholding his duty to the best of his ability, even going above and beyond in lots of cases, in regards to rescuing Riku from the Don Quixote family and everything like that when they show up, and, losing his own leg in the process to be able to save his father-in-law and his king and this man that he has looked up to for a good chunk of his life. And so many other things like that we see him do throughout that time frame. In regards to how loyal he is and how protective he is and how much he will, do what he needs to protect the people that he cares about, and protect the people of Dressrosa as well. He, is also very popular amongst the people and everything like that, given the fact that he becomes this, icon at the, at the Colosseum and everything like that, and how he, then becomes the captain of the Dressrosa Guard and everything like that. And so many of those things. Going into his actual story. So as I stated, when we first kind of meet him in the flashback, he's about 15 years old, and he grew up in the slums of Dressrosa, which, as much as Riku tries to help take care of the kingdom, obviously there are going to be slums within a kingdom. I mean, that happens here in America, that happens in, even we see that a little bit in, in Fishman Island in the Fishman district. We see that in other areas as well, of other countries where it's a bit more, we see that all over the place in Wano, even though in Wano it is much more intentional by Orochi for there to be slums. Riku does not strike me as a king that intentionally tries to have slums. And he probably tries to do what he can to try to prevent those from happening as much as possible, but people are going to fall through the cracks, and Riku doesn't like that happens in the first place on his watch. But what ends up happening is Riku and Kyros end up meeting when Kyros is 15 years old, and it was because Kyros had ruthlessly ended up killing two people in a fight. Kyros had killed two people in a fight, and he ended up striking Riku in the head when the king tried to speak with him. And even though that happened, he still told, Riku told the soldiers not to attack Kyros, and that kind of, settled him down a little bit, and then he asked Kyros to come with him. Now, the reason Kyros is so angry, if I'm remembering correctly, is because his friend had died, or his friend was killed by someone, and Kyros was trying to avenge his friend's death. So not exactly killing in cold blood type of a thing, but still not exactly, the most honorable type of thing. So Kyros and Riku go to the gladiatorial Coliseum, the Cordia Coliseum, and Riku convinces Kyros to sign up for it. And he ends up, Kyros signs up and, goes in, stays and lives in the Coliseum and everything like that. And over the next so many years, Kyros is told, if you can win 100 battles, then you have accomplished. Kyros. So it's Riku tells Kyros that if you will be released upon completing 100 battles, upon winning 100 battles, which Kyros managed to accomplish in the span of 4 months. And even despite earning his freedom, Kyros decides to stay in the Colosseum. And he continues again and again because he continues to stay in the stadium because he is aware of the fact that everyone in Dressrosa seems to hate him. And he just keeps achieving victory after victory after victory during all of these fights. He even fights a giant underwater, or he fights a giant and he fights a fisherman underwater, winning both times. And eventually, in his 4th year at the Colosseum, he has managed to win 1,000 victories. And while he is allowed to leave the Colosseum, which he does at least at one point, we see him go and visit his friend's grave, and with Riku, he's like being escorted by him, and Kyros expresses sorrow at the fact that he doesn't think that anyone will ever see him as anything besides a beast, besides a monster for what he had done. And he is very much, he actually ends up wishing for everyone to forget about him, which unfortunately ends up coming to pass in a very twisted way later on. But what ends up happening is after 9 years on the Colosseum, Kyros has achieved 3,000 victories and has remained undefeated. And has sustaining only 1 hit from his last opponent, who just happened to be Riku in the disguise of Ricky, which of course I went over in Riku's video. So during this match, during his 3,000th battle, Riku has made his way into the stadium under the guise of being Ricky, and Riku and Kyros end up having Kyros' final battle in the Colosseum. And Kyros still wins, and he still, knocks out Riku. And after, and he realizes that it's Riku, and after the fight, Riku is just like, okay, it's time for you to leave the Colosseum. And during all of this time frame while Kyros was being this, gladiator in the Colosseum, the people's opinion of him was beginning to change. And during those 9 years, he ends up actually becoming this hero within Dressrosa. People seem to have not necessarily 100% forgotten that he had killed someone, but they have seen that he is not the man that they thought he was initially. And, Riku is encouraging Kyros to finally leave the Colosseum and everything like that, and that he should not live his life in a cage any longer. There's actually the quote that Riku says to him is, "Do not lament mistakes of the past, Kyros. You can find meaning by using your strength to protect the lives of others." And this leads to, yes, Kyros does leave the Colosseum, and they end up erecting this statue at the Colosseum, which still stands at the present time in Dressrosa. And what ends up happening is by the age of 25, Kyros is now the captain of the Dressrosa army. And although Riku's oldest daughter, Scarlet, does not seem fond of him at all, is not fond of him in the slightest. And we see her, yelling at him and chastising him and everything like that for, the fact that he had been a murderer, and, she didn't forget about that. And we actually see both princesses interact with him for the first time, I believe, at the same time. And Viola at this point already has her devil fruit, and she's actually she scans Kyros to see what he kind of looks like. And Viola actually does not see anything wrong with Kyros. She does not see that he is evil or anything like that. And so Viola kind of doesn't think Scarlet is correct in her deduction of what Kyros is, of Kyros being a bad person. But Viola is also going to like follow her big sister's lead to a degree. And what ends up happening is, Rebecca and Kyros do not get off to a good start, as I went over in Kyros's video and Rebecca's video. Scarlet. Sorry, that Scarlet and Kyros do not get off to a good start. And what ends up happening is, at one point, Scarlet is kidnapped, and Kyros is the one that goes and saves her, defeats all the pirates on the ship, and saves her. And she just ends up, throwing her arms around him and hugging him and everything like that after he's making sure that she's okay. And we kind of see this moment where he's afraid to touch her because he knows that she does not appreciate him at that point in time, or up till that point in time they haven't had any very good interaction with each other. He's like, I'm saving you because it's my job. And like, this is where we see Scarlet's impression of him shift. And he doesn't want to touch her, because he sees himself as still having blood on his hands, but he doesn't want to ruin this princess and everything like that, this daughter of the man who has helped him so much. And Scarlet just ends up hugging him tighter and everything like that. And subsequently, this leads to where, of course, Scarlet falls in love with him and everything like that. We see her, as I mentioned in her video, making lunches for him and giving them to him and everything like that. And he's just like very bewildered by this very sudden shift in how she acts toward him. And, we see them, kind of as the seasons pass, the two of them getting to know each other and everything like that, and falling in love. And eventually what ends up happening is Kyros goes to Riku and tells him, I am in love with your daughter and I wish to marry her. And Rebecca and Scarlet comes in and is basically saying, if you don't let me marry him, Dad, I'm going to leave. And Riku, as much as he loves his daughter and he wants he wants her to be happy and everything like that, and he knows that like within Dressrosa enough people have a positive opinion of Kyros now, but he knows that there's going to be this uproar if his daughter, his heir, marries someone who has a murder in their past and is not of royal blood, mostly the murder part. And what ends up happening is Scarlet and Riku come up with the idea that Scarlet will fake her own death, and she will then go and live with Kyros. And that's what happens. They fake Scarlet's death, and the only ones who know that Scarlet is still alive, although I'm pretty sure the rest of the kingdom figures it out very quickly, are of course her parents and Viola, and she goes off to be with Kyros. And certain members of the royal guard know that her and Kyros are still alive, because like the king does tend to send supplies out to them, not like a huge amount or anything like that, but like little bits every now and then. And of course they go and visit Scarlet and Kyros out in their little, their nice little quaint little cottage out in the flower fields and everything like that, where Rebecca ends up being born, but where Scarlet is, she grows the flowers and then they take them into town and sell them and everything like that. And as I stated in her video, very, very certain that the rest of the kingdom figures out very quickly that, oh no, Scarlet isn't dead. We all saw that she was in love with Kyros, and they faked her death so she and Kyros could go and be together. And now she sells flowers, because how are we not going to recognize our own princess and this other man who is basically a local celebrity, and the fact that they are now together, type of a thing, and that they have a daughter. Also the king ain't so subtle as he thinks he is. So it's like that type of a thing. And eventually, of course, as I said, they have Rebecca, and of course they all adore Rebecca and everything, and Kyros has the problem where he can't really bring himself to want to touch Rebecca with his bare hands, because again, he still sees himself as having blood on his hands, and he doesn't want to touch this thing that is this innocent thing, this innocent little life in front of him. And he just adores her, and that's why he has like the gloves that he wears whenever he's around her, whenever he's playing with her, or holding her, or anything like that. And Scarlet kind of is trying to convince him that you don't need to do that. It's okay. Type of a thing. And of course, eventually it gets to, when Rebecca is about 6. This is when the Doflamingo shows up and everything like that. And of course, during when all of this is happening, Kyros, Rebecca, and Scarlet see as like around Dressrosa that the kingdom is burning, that the palace is burning, and they're like, okay. Kyros is like, okay, I have to go and see what's going on with that. And he tells Rebecca and Scarlet to go and hide in the red flower field, and that's where, to find him, and that's where he'll wait for them, or they can wait for him. So they're safe. And what ends up happening is Kyros puts on his armor, and he heads into the capital to go and try to find Riku. At this point in time, this has already been after Riku and his guards have been, puppeteered by Doflamingo into attacking their own people and everything like that, and making it appear like Riku has gone mad. And Doflamingo has Riku captured, and I believe he is getting ready to try to end Riku, but I'm not sure exactly. I know they don't want to turn Riku into a toy, because then everybody will then forget about Riku, and that would not help their plan. So we know that that's not the case. But what ends up happening is Kyros gets to the castle, and he is horrified to find Doflamingo and everything, and inform that he has sent, that Doflamingo has sent his informant, his subordinates, to go and kill both Rebecca and Scarlet and everything like that. And one of the things I did not mention, but I did want to point out here, is that I mentioned this in the brothers and the sisters videos when I was going over stuff for Kyros and Viola in those videos, is that Kyros and Viola actually have a very good relationship with each other. During the time frame that Kyros and Scarlet are married, and even leading up to when they get married, Viola, as I said, has a very good impression of him. She can tell that he is a good person, because by that point in time, she already has her devil fruit. Since I'll be going over Viola next when I do these videos, I don't remember if we ever find out exactly how old she is when she gets her devil fruit, but she's had it for a long time. For at least 16, 17 years. But what ends up happening is Kyros and Viola have this very good relationship. They have this very mutually respectful relationship where she has seen that he has tried to pay for the mistakes that he made in the past and everything like that, and that he has come out a better person on the other side, and that he adores her sister and adores her niece, and just very much respects her father and everything like that, and has done what he can to try to protect them and try to protect the kingdom and everything like that. And Kyros has a large amount of respect for Viola as well and everything, and has watched her grow up over that time frame, and been this older brother figure to her. The thing is that throughout the whole time frame of the Dressrosa arc, we don't get that many images of them together during the past. We see them a little bit, like when he arrives at the castle, during this time frame when when Doflamingo is there, and is holding, Riku hostage and everything. We see the two of them interact a little bit, but not very much. And I believe she is there when he is, turned into the toy, but again, because he's turned into the toy, she doesn't remember him then. And we see some of that, but later on, and I'll go over this a little bit more when we get to it, the only other time that we really see this huge amount of, or the next time that we see this huge amount of connection between the two of them, is when everybody is getting their memories back of not just all the other toys, but Kyros, of who they really were, that Kyros, that we see Viola remembering Kyros, and remembering and putting together the pieces that he's been the one as the Thunder Soldier taking care of Rebecca for the past 10 years, and everything like that, that he never wavered in his duty of being her father. And we see how much Viola very much very much does love Kyros in that regard, as this brother figure that she has, and as, you know, a father figure for Rebecca and everything. So I do like that they show that relationship there. I would have liked it if we could have got a little bit more interaction between the two of them. But Kyros is always exceedingly respectful to Rebecca, or to Viola. But as I mentioned, what ends up happening is Kyros ends up getting, his leg gets chained, and then they're going to have Sugar turn him into a toy, and what ends up happening is he sacrifices his own leg that's in the chains, cuts it off, jumps out, is touched by Sugar and turned into the Thunder Soldier toy. But because she does not make a contract with him, he still has a fair amount of, a good chunk of free will. But during this, he grabs Riku and manages to get out of the castle. He saves Riku and escapes. And, you know, in that instance, when he's turned into the toy, everybody forgets about Kyros. The only remaining thing that they know about him is the statue, and he becomes this even more legendary figure in the fact that he won 3,000 battles within the Cordia Coliseum and was undefeated for all 3,000 of them. And what ends up happening is, of course, you know, Kyros as the Thunder Soldier gets Riku to safety, and he's like, Your Highness, are you okay? Your Majesty, are you okay? Are you hurt? It's me, Kyros. And he's like, who is Kyros? I don't know who that is. And, I thank you, Toy Soldier, for helping me and everything like that. And so we see all of that. And what ends up happening next is, of course, Kyros is kind of safe at the moment, or Riku being somewhat safe at that moment. Kyros knows that he needs to go and try to protect Rebecca and Scarlet. So he starts making his way back to where they would be. And there is one moment where he shows up and he's able to stop several of the Doflamingo subordinates. I don't remember if Diamante is among this group or not. But he's able to slow them down to allow Rebecca and Scarlet time to escape. And then he ends up seeing Scarlet again when she comes in to try to find food, because, of course, they don't remember Kyros, so they don't remember exactly who they're waiting for at the Red Flower Field. And Scarlet, because Rebecca is hungry, goes into town to try to find food. This, of course, leads to where she is shot by Diamante. And Kyros is there as the Thunder Soldier when this is happening. And he ends up watching as his wife is shot by Diamante, and he can do nothing about it, because even though he goes over and he's like picking her up, and he's like, I know, it's me, it's Kyros, it's me, your husband. And Scarlet has no, who is that? I don't have a husband, type of a thing. And she's like, please take care of my daughter, this food is for her and everything. And Kyros runs back to where they are in the Red Flower Fields, and where the Sunflower Fields at that point in time is where they end up hiding. And he brings Scarlet there, and as I mentioned in the Scarlet video, there's so much tragedy in the fact that Rebecca, Scarlet dies completely forgetting about her own husband. She has no idea that this toy soldier holding her is her husband, and is the man that has, been the love of her life, and that she is the love of his life, and everything like that. And, it's heartbreaking, and Oda is so good at the heartbreaking backstories that he does, for so many of the characters. And it's, you could get mad at him for it, but you're just like, God dang it, Oda. And, we're getting that currently in the story with Bonnie and Kuma and everything like that, and Ginny and all of that. But what ends up happening is, of course, Kyros takes Scarlet's body back to where Rebecca is, and they bury her, and they give her this very modest gravestone. And he then has to try to figure out a way to get Rebecca to eat. And instead of doing, he he eventually ends up getting her to eat, and it involves him being a bit of like, he realizes he has to play up on the toy part of this stuff because, you know, Rebecca does not remember who he is at all. So he has to figure out a way of like getting her to work with him so she will eat. And this, of course, leads to the habit where Rebecca will deny being hungry, even when her stomach is growling, because the last time she asked someone for food like that, it led to her mother's death. So yes. During this time frame, Rebecca, of course, initially hated him because he was not able to protect her mother and everything like that. But eventually, she warms up to him, and he becomes her guardian. And over the course of the next couple of years, what ends up happening is the Thunder Soldier has taken on, he's taken on the name of the Thunder Soldier. And he works many jobs to help support Rebecca and to help keep her safe from wild dogs and bullies and, boys giving her love letters and different things like that. And he, works to get her this like little house that she can stay in, but he's not allowed to be in the house with her. And he shows up there every day to help take care of her, and he works at night, and he works so many these other different jobs so that way he can have money to help pay for food and stuff like that for Rebecca. One day what ends up happening is kidnappers broke into the house, and this ends up resulting in they kidnap Rebecca. The Thunder Soldier finds them, beats them down, and saves Rebecca. However, this leads to him becoming a fugitive in the process. So they run away, and he decides that he has to start teaching her how to fight so she can protect herself. Although Rebecca, like her mother, is very hesitant about this because she is very much this pacifist, and she does not want to hurt anyone. And what ends up happening is Kyros ends up pointing out this instance where the fact of like, I am a toy, I am a soldier made of tin, and my joints will rust, and it will become hard for me to fight to be able to protect you. So you need to be able to help protect yourself. He's not trying to say that she has to kill anybody, that she has to harm anyone or maim anyone or anything like that. He's telling her that she needs to be able to protect herself, that she needs to be able to at least wield a sword enough to be able to defend herself long enough for someone else to show up to be able to help her if that is what is necessary, or at the very least to be able to disarm her opponent, which is fair. And he starts training her and everything like that, and how to use a sword and all of this stuff, and he ends up training her into this type of technique that we end up seeing her use later on down the road, where she is able to kind of like dance around the field enough that she is able to eventually get her opponent up by the edge of the battlefield and knock them off the battlefield and into the water or so. And that will lead to her being able to win. So it's like being able to back your opponent into a corner without actually hurting them and everything like that. And during, of course, all this training is, when he reveals his own limitations and everything like that. And eventually what ends up happening is Rebecca ends up getting captured again. And she ends up because they figure out who she is. And they take her to the Cordia Coliseum, where she is then there for the next several years up until, when the Dressrosa arc starts. And during this time frame, he still continues to go and visit her at the Coliseum as much as he can. And he also starts building up this like underground movement with the dwarves and everything like that that'll help with trying to, take down Doflamingo when they get the chance. And of course, this is where they're working on building up, their plan to try to take out Sugar, to reverse all the toys and everything like that. And of course, when Rebecca reveals that she intends to, try to join the competition for the Maramarino, he is horrified by this, and he doesn't want her entering it and everything like that, which is fair. And Rebecca ended up getting very angry at him for this, and she ends up telling him that he has no chance against Doflamingo because he is just a one-legged toy. And after her outburst, he then left while she cries out her apology. And so we get so much of that, and like you know, in the flashbacks that we get, we see so much of like him just trying to help her have somewhat of a good childhood. He, you know, throws her birthdays as much as he can. He gets her cake. He gets, you know, toys or stuff like that to help her with, you know, having, you know, a fun time and everything like that as much as possible. So he very much tries. Kyros definitely goes up there as one of like one of the top fathers in One Piece, in regards to what he goes through. Then we get to where, you know, after the time skip, you know, much more present day setup in Dressrosa, where it is, you know, the Dressrosa arc. And, you know, there's the competition for the Marimara no Mi, and what ends up happening is Kyros ends up meeting, or the Thunder Soldier ends up meeting Luffy and Frankie outside of the Cordia Coliseum. Well, that's not entirely true, because he's getting chased through the streets of Dressrosa and makes his way to the Coliseum because he's being chased by guards. And he jumps onto the Coliseum and he like puts his foot inside of the Coliseum and he's like, ha 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 ha, you can't touch me, because of the rules of the Coliseum that were in place by the Doflamingo family and everything like that. And so, you know, the Marines can't touch him and everything like that, so they're just like, God dang it, and they leave. And so it's just like him playing up on that, which is just hilarious, and I love that. And then he kind of like, you know, jumps down, and this is where he ends up interacting with Luffy and Frankie and everything like that, because like they're dressed like old men and everything, and he tries to help them with their luggage, which is just him being polite. And he, you know, Kyros also as the Thunder Soldier is trying to play at being a bit comical and everything, stuff like that, to make himself seem less of a threat, which is just funny. And of course, eventually this ends up leading to where Frankie and him, where he ends up revealing to Frankie about the fact that the toys are actually people who were turned into toys, and then people forgot about them. And, you know, this leads to where Frankie and everything, you know, Frankie ends up, you know, teaming up with, you know, Kyros as the Thunder Soldier and everything like that. And, you know, Luffy is okay with this because during this time frame, Luffy goes in and he joins the competition for the Marimara no Mi, so he can try to win back Ace's Devil Fruit, everything like that, and ends up meeting Rebecca eventually and all of that stuff. So that's what's happening there. During this time frame, Frankie and Kyros have gone off, and it eventually ends up leading to where, you know, they're traveling through Dressrosa and everything like that, and eventually they end up making their way to where the dwarves have their headquarters. And of course, eventually this ends up being where they meet up with Robin and Usopp, who were on Greenbit with Law, and then Law gets captured and all of that stuff, and they end up all coming together. Zoro and Sanji also end up being involved in this at some point in time, if I'm remembering correctly, but I don't remember exactly. And then I think Kinemon is also there at some point later on. But what ends up happening is, you know, eventually it ends up being that Kyros, as the Thunder Soldier, is explaining to Frankie and Robin and Usopp about what had actually happened on that night with Goncho, who is the king of the dwarves, helping with explaining it and everything about the history of the Riku family, and, you know, even after the Void Century, that they were the ones that took over for the Doflamingo, the Don Quixote family, after they became celestial dragons and everything, and explaining that. And, you know, that Rebecca is this fighter in the Coliseum, but she's also the granddaughter of the former king and everything like that. And how you know, Riku was actually this wonderful king, and how the kingdom was manipulated by Doflamingo and everything like that, you know, 10 years ago. So, you know, they're explaining all of this backstory to Robin and Frankie and Usopp and all of that stuff. They're also explaining that Viola, as with her Devil Fruit, is actually kind of a threat to their plan, because she has the glare fruit and she's able to see stuff all over the island. And I don't remember if anyone points out, but I think this is part of Kyros' faith in Viola coming into play here, where he's like, I think it is pointed out that it's just like, well, she is technically a threat to us in this regard, given how much she would have known by that point in time about their plan, or would have been able to like piece together from their plan from what she would see from, you know, scanning the island for threats and everything like that, even with her perceived loyalty to Doflamingo. she tells him nothing about what the dwarves and what, Kyros are planning and everything like that, because she wants them to succeed. And, this is the best shot they have at being able to succeed and being able to, defeat Doflamingo and all of that stuff. So, I think Kyros' faith in her kind of comes in there. And eventually this ends up leading to where they explain about the Operation SOP, which I was trying to see if I could find out what Operation SOP stood for, but I couldn't find it. But it's just like something knockout sugar over exposed sugar or something like that, or whatever. Where they're supposed to, use the very spicy thing that looks like a grape and, knock sugar out with it and everything like that. Which is not a bad plan, but that's their intention. And of course, they all head off in their own different directions. And Kyros' part of this is that he is supposed to make his way to the castle, so that way, when he is there, when they're all reversed from their toy status, he is then able to be in the proper position to be able to then try to assassinate Doflamingo. So that way he can try to end this as soon as possible, which is a good plan. And of course, this leads to, they all go their separate directions, and eventually ends up resulting in Kyros meeting up with Luffy and Viola, or the Thunder Soldier meeting up with Luffy and Viola, and Frankie, and Frankie's off doing at the Smile Factory, but Zoro is there as well, I think, and everything like that. And they end up making their way, through the castle. There is a moment where they do have to fight against Lao G, and they do have to fight against Gladys. And at one point, Kyros ends up getting his head just expanded a whole lot by Gladys, so that way they can then blow it up. But I think Luffy manages to get Kyros away and is able to, negate the explosion or whatever it ends up being that Gladys would have caused. And they eventually end up getting it to where they are right outside of the window area where Doflamingo is on the other side, where he has Law trapped, and where they have several other people in there and everything like that. I think Buffalo and Baby 5 are in there as well. Are all in there trying to, try to get information out of Law and taunting him and everything like that. I think Fujitora is in there as well, but I'm not sure off the top of my head. But, Luffy and Kyros and Viola, Luffy, Viola, and Thunder Soldier are there and waiting and everything like that. And at one point, Luffy just wants to barge in there, but Viola's holding him back, and she's like, no, we have to wait for them for everybody to, be turned back from being toys, for them to turn back into themselves, because that way, then, there's this huge amount of confusion in the populace, and that means that they have a bit of a time there. And it also means that Kyros, once he gets changed, not that she knows that Kyros is, the Thunder Soldier is Kyros and all that stuff, but she can piece together that he's probably this strong warrior and everything like that. And she's been watching over the last 10 years as Kyros has been taking care of Rebecca and everything like that. So she's already kind of indebted to him at that point in time. And of course, this does eventually to, where, Sugar gets knocked out by Usopp and everything like that. And her power is reversed, and everybody is changing back into their human forms. And of course, Kyros is, the Thunder Soldier is changed into his human form at this point in time. Riku is also within the room being held captive by Doflamingo as well. But Kyros is transformed back into his human form. And we have the moment where, everybody's memories come flooding back of all the people who were turned into toys and all that stuff. And, we see the moment where Rebecca, is in the Coliseum with, Sabo and Bartolomeo and everything like that during that battle, during that part of the tournament, and how she's, has all of her memories of her father flooding back, which I'll go into more detail when I'm doing the Rebecca video. And then, we see Viola have very similar, where all of her memories of Kyros come flooding back of him as, this protector and her brother-in-law and everything like that. And she is crying because she's, remembering all of that stuff about him. And, Kyros, is all back to his normal self, and he, well, minus a leg, and he jumps through the window, and he starts attacking, and he decapitates the Doflamingo clone that's there. They think it's the real one, it's the fake one. They decapitate him. He manages, I think he has like a slight skirmish with like Buffalo and Baby 5 in this time frame as well, but it doesn't last very long. And he ends up, freeing Riku. And during this time frame, Viola and Luffy are trying to free Law, who has Sea Prismstone's cuffs on him, so they can't touch the key very well and everything like that to try to unlock the cuffs. So we have that issue going on there. And of course, eventually, Doflamingo reveals that, ha ha ha, that was a duplicate that you attacked, and I'm over here, and blah 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 blah. And, attacks more, and Kyros is trying to attack more and everything. And eventually this, of course, leads to where they kind of all get knocked out of the castle. And they have to end up kind of dividing into different areas. And eventually what ends up happening is, there's so many of these other different battles that are going on. And, of course, Kyros is, helping protect Riku and Viola, and eventually ends up getting, to a degree reunited with Rebecca during a bunch of this stuff. But what ends up happening is, of course, the climax of the battle that involves Kyros is that he ends up making his way to the sunflower fields where Scarlet is buried, and where Rebecca is now. At that point in time, and Diamante is there, and we have this huge battle. This very it's a very poignant battle in the fact of what it is representing, but it is also this very awesome battle in how Kyros and Diamante fight against each other, because with Diamante, he has all these tricks up his bag of, I'm going to use my flag flute to drop all these different, spiked balls and everything like that, and all of this stuff out of the sky, to cause so much damage and everything like that. And, Kyros and Robin are there with Rebecca, and, Robin is trying to protect Rebecca while all of this is going on, and Kyros is fighting against Diamante at this point in time. And, of course, we see as he's, rained down upon by all the spiked balls and everything like that. I don't remember what they're actually called, sorry. But he's being rained down upon by those, and he's like, this is nothing compared to the pain that I have gone through over the past 10 years with, having you being the one that shot my wife in front of me, and, not, having my wife die in my arms and not know who I am, and taking care of my daughter for the past 10 years and her having no idea who I am, and, all of this other stuff, and making everybody forget about me. And, whatever you can do to me pales in comparison to that pain. And, of course, Kyros is able to defeat Diamante. He is able to summon up. And Kyros has no devil fruit, which is just one of the other things that just makes Kyros even more badass, is that he has no devil fruit. Nothing against the people who are badass with their devil fruit and use it in badass ways. But Kyros is like, screw this. I don't have a devil fruit, but I'm still going to fight this guy. It's also, I don't remember if it's ever explicitly stated, but given his level of fighting technique and the fact that he is in the new world, I would say that Kyros definitely at least has observation and armament hockey. But I do not remember if we ever actually see him use either of them throughout the course of the arc. As much as I'm aware, I do not remember it. I would think he would have him, just because of his, skill set so far has indicated that it would make sense for him to have both observation and armament hockey given his level of skill. But I don't remember if it's ever explicitly stated, and I don't remember if I saw it in my, when I was double checking on the One Piece Pedia page about him. But I think he does. And eventually what ends up happening is, he defeats Diamante, and Diamante falls, and his head lands directly on Scarlet's gravestone, and then he just falls off to the side, and then we don't see Diamante move again for the rest of the arc. And since then, we have not seen Diamante move again. So, is Diamante paralyzed? Is Diamante dead? We don't know. We'll find out if we ever end up interacting with him again in Impel Down, depending on how that goes. But of course, this leads to the moment where Kyros and Rebecca are finally able to be together in front of Scarlet's grave for the first time, with both of them knowing exactly who the other one is, and they are able to just have this moment. and finally be together and just be father and daughter again for this time frame. But of course, that doesn't last very long, because that, of course, leads to when Doflamingo activates the birdcage, and of course, the two of them can't just have like this. They can't have one nice thing. This is why we can't have nice things. And they're like, okay, well, we have to go and do what we can to try to protect everyone. And of course, they're helping try to stop the barrier, try to get people out of the way, trying to get people safe, all of this other stuff, watching as other stuff is happening with Masharian, like healing everybody, and Leo and all of that stuff. And we see a bunch of that stuff. And, eventually it does end up being where, of course, Luffy, and of course I'll go into what happens with Rebecca and Doflamingo when I get to that with Rebecca and Doflamingo. But what ends up happening is, of course, Rebecca and Kyros are there with Robin when Riku is like encouraging the citizens not to give up and not to despair and everything like that. And eventually, Luffy defeats Doflamingo and everything like that, and the bird cage is destroyed. And within all of this happening, after after the bird cage is destroyed and everything like that, and Luffy announces his Luffy's victory of Doflamingo is announced and everything like that. Kyros then cries for the first time in 10 years, because as a toy he couldn't cry, and with everything else that was going on, there was like, I have other stuff I have to do before I can deal with my own emotional trauma. And after everything is done with that, with the battle, then he cries. He then later on gets, he salutes the dwarves and their commanders and everything like that in regards to like their efforts with taking down Doflamingo. And of course, later this results to where, he has the Straw Hats and Law and Bellamy stay at his house and everything like that, so they can recover from their wounds, and they stay there for a couple of days. And of course, eventually, he's the one that hears about like the Marines are going to be coming to get them, so he, tells the Straw Hats that they need to go. And he's the one that actually starts the rumor that Rebecca's father is actually this prince from a faraway kingdom who died in a war, so he would not need to be a part of the royal family, because he wants to try to give Rebecca this shot of being able to be the princess. And he ends up sending Rebecca this letter explaining it and everything like that. And Rebecca initially seems somewhat okay with it, but she's just like, no, I can't do that. I'm not going to. I have waited for 10 years to be able to try to live with the Thunder Soldier in the same house, and now I know he's my father, and I'm not going to give that up. And of course, this is where Luffy shows up at the palace and ends up, getting her back to where Kyros is, and, in the sunflower fields and everything like that. And, Rebecca gets to the, makes her way to where Kyros is, and she's just like, no, I'm staying with you. I am going to stay with you. I don't care about being a princess. I want to be with you. I want to be with my father. I have waited for 10 years for this, and I want to be with you because I love you and because you're my dad and everything like that. And it's not like she has to give up her relationship with, Riku and with Viola and all of that stuff. She does not have to. She gets to keep that relationship. She's just not going to be, the heir to the throne. That's going to be Viola again. And they watch as, Luffy and the rest of the eventual Straw Hat Grand Fleet leave and everything like that. And that's, they're just very happy for Luffy in that regard and his crew, and that they managed to, help. Very happy and thankful to them for helping, being able to, defeat Doflamingo and help them save their country and everything like that. So we see that. And eventually, and then we get to where we have the Reverie arc. Which is the most recent time, I believe, that we've seen Kyros at the very least, because when they are on their way to the Reverie, their ship is almost attacked, and Kobe is the one that ends up saving them. saving the Dressrosa Proteus Kingdom convoy from a pirate attack, and Kyros recognizes Kobe as the hero from the Rocky Port incident and everything like that, which just makes Kobe blush. We do not see Kyros at all during the actual reverie, like at Marijois. He's not there for any of the stuff where we see them in the big party garden area with all them interacting with each other, because he's not there when Rebecca is meeting Shirahoshi and Vivi. He's not there when Viola meets Igaram and Fukaboshi. So I'm assuming Kyros either stayed on the ship to keep everything okay on the ship so it was ready to leave when it was time, or he was there, we just didn't see him. Because we know he was part of the alliance and the group that went to Reverie. We just don't see him there. Beyond the interaction with Kobe. Because I can assure you that if he was there when everything was happening with Shirahoshi trying to be captured by Charlos either time, then he would have been trying to step up and try to do something to try to stop Charlos. Because he knows what it's like to have your daughter taken away from you. And he does not want that for Neptune. Even though he would have just met Neptune. Also, Shirahoshi is, Rebecca's friend. So he's like, why would I want my daughter's friend to be hurt? Type of a thing. So those are what I think would have happened, but we don't ever see him during that time frame. And of course, we haven't gotten any updates of Dressrosa since then. My thought is that most likely, we will end up getting this other moment where Kyros and Rebecca, as I've stated before, I would love it if during one of the final battles, or one of the times when it's like, okay, fine, we're finally going to go and fight the world government, and the Straw Hat allies are all going to be fighting together and everything like that, that Kyros and Rebecca are like the ones leading the charge of the Dressrosa military, with like Tank there and the Tontatas and everything like that as part of this group there to fight against whoever it is that they're trying to attack at that point in time, whoever it is that they're fighting at that point in time. And I would love that, but I have no idea if that's going to happen. We'll just have to wait and see. Yes, so that's what I have there for Kyros, and that should be my last one of these for this year, I believe, because this should be going up the week after Christmas. And then I'll have another one that'll be the Black Clover Royal video that I believe is going to be Lola Pechka. So that's what we have there. The next one for these, it'll be the first one of the new year, I believe, is going to be about Viola. So I believe Viola will be the next one that I will have for these. So that's what I have for this. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!